Let's jump right into it. Today, in this explainer, we're exploring one of the absolute most fascinating frontiers in all of science, the human mind. Specifically, we're looking at how psychologists actually attempt to map out the parts of our mind that we can't easily see or, frankly, even articulate. The unconscious is this vast, hidden landscape, and mapping it out, well, that requires some incredibly creative psychological tools. So, let's dive in.
It's kind of the ultimate psychological puzzle, right? How do you possibly measure something that people either actively want to hide from you or, and this is even trickier, they don't even realize is there in the first place? Psychoanalytic theory tells us that a huge chunk of human behavior is governed by unconscious motives. So we're only looking at what people tell us on the surface. We're missing a massive part of the whole picture.
To understand how psychologists actually solve this, we really have to compare two approaches. Direct techniques of personality assessment rely on information obtained straight from the person. But here's the catch. When people know their personality is being assessed, they tend to get pretty self-conscious. They might hesitate to share private feelings, and they very often answer in a socially desirable manner. Basically, they tell you what sounds good. Indirect techniques, on the other hand, are designed to completely bypass those conscious defenses to uncover real, hidden, unconscious motives.
Uncovering the unconscious.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that to truly understand someone, we need a special set of tools. And that brings us to projective techniques. This is just a brilliant concept. The core assumption here is that if you present someone with a less structured or even entirely unstructured stimulus, they're going to naturally project their own internal feelings, desires, and needs right onto that blank canvas. The ambiguity literally acts as a mirror for the mind. You aren't just looking at the stimulus anymore. You're looking at your own unconscious reflected right back at you.
Now, while there are lots of different types of projective techniques out there, they actually all share 5 key features. First off, the stimuli are relatively or just fully unstructured and poorly defined. Second, the person usually isn't told the actual purpose of the assessment or even how it's scored. Third, and this is a big one to remember, there are absolutely no correct or incorrect responses. No right or wrong answers here. Fourth, every single response is considered significant and revealing some aspect of personality. And finally, the scoring and interpretation are lengthy and pretty subjective. They require rigorous, specialized training, not just some simple answer key you can check.
Rorschach's inkblot test. Let's take a look at what is arguably the most famous projective technique of all time. Just look at this symmetrical design. This is the Rorschach inkblot test, developed by Hermann Rorschach. Fun fact, originally, these blots were made quite literally by dropping ink onto a piece of paper and then folding it in half to create this perfect mirrored symmetry. They're printed right in the center of a 7 by 10 inch white cardboard card. When you look at this, your brain just naturally tries to make sense of the shape. And what you see, well, that says a whole lot about you.
But the official Rorschach test doesn't just use any random ink blots. It's a highly standardized set. The test consists of exactly 10 specific ink blots. 5 of them are purely in black and white. 2 of them introduce some red ink, and the remaining 3 feature various pastel colors.
Administering this test is actually a pretty delicate 2-phase process that's conducted individually. In step 1, which is called performance proper, the subject is simply shown the cards and asked to say what they see. Then comes step 2, the inquiry. Here, a really detailed report is prepared by asking the subject to explain exactly where they saw what they saw, how they saw it, and on what basis they made that specific response. It requires incredibly fine judgment by the examiner to place all these responses into a meaningful psychological context.
Telling stories, the TAT.
Next up, let's explore another truly fascinating artifact in our psychological toolkit. This one swaps out abstract ink blots for situational imagery. It's the thematic apperception test, or the TAT for short, developed by Morgan and Murray. It is a little bit more structured than the ink blots. The test consists of 30 black and white picture cards, plus 1 entirely blank card. Each picture depicts people in a variety of really ambiguous situations. Some cards are used specifically with adult males, some with females or children. Typically, a subject is presented with 20 cards, one at a time, but sometimes even just 5 cards can be successfully used. So when a subject is handed one of these picture cards, they're tasked with building a story, but they must answer 4 specific questions. What led up to this situation? What is happening right at this moment? What will happen in the future? And what are the characters feeling and thinking? By crafting this narrative, the subject essentially projects their own experiences and deep conflicts right onto the characters. Oh, and an interesting side note, the TAT has been modified across all sorts of different cultures and age groups, including a really well-known Indian adaptation by Uma Chaudhry. frustration and sentences. Let's look at two distinct methods that rely on totally different types of prompts, starting with Rosenzweig's picture frustration study. This test uses cartoon-like pictures to present a series of situations where one person frustrates another. The subject just has to say what the frustrated person will say or do. What the psychologist is looking for here is exactly how you express aggression. Is your aggression directed outwardly, towards the environment, inwardly, towards yourself, or do you try to just evade the situation entirely? It's a brilliant way to assess conflict resolution. And just like the TAT, it's also been adapted for use in India by Parikh.
Now, imagine someone hands you a piece of paper with incomplete sentences. This is the sentence completion test. The starting part of the sentence is provided, and you just have to finish it. Things like, my father, or the best thing about my mother is, or even simply, my greatest fear is. The endings you provide naturally reflect your underlying attitudes, your motivations, and those unconscious conflicts we've been talking about. Because it's so open-ended, it provides just numerous opportunities for your true self to kind of slip out onto the page.
The draw a person test.
Now we arrive at what might just be the most deceptively simple test of them all, one that literally turns the psychologist into a visual detective. This is the draw a person test. You are simply given a pencil, an eraser, and a sheet of paper and asked to, well, draw a person. After that, you're usually asked to draw a person of the opposite sex and make up a little story about them. But look at how experts interpret the specific features of what you draw. If a subject completely omits facial features, it suggests they might be trying to evade a highly conflict-ridden interpersonal relationship. A heavy, graphic emphasis on the neck, that can actually suggest a lack of control over impulses. And surprisingly, drawing a disproportionately large head might suggest an organic brain disease or a really deep preoccupation with headaches. It is just incredible how much a seemingly simple drawing can reveal. Powerful but subjective tools. Now, as fascinating as all these techniques are, we do need to bring ourselves back down to reality for a second with a necessary note of caution. While projective techniques are amazing at helping us understand unconscious motives, deep-rooted conflicts, and emotional complexes, they are for sure not an exact science. Because they're inherently unstructured, interpreting the responses requires highly sophisticated skills and really specialized training. You literally can't just score these with a computer algorithm and get a perfect result every time. And because of this subjectivity, there are ongoing problems associated with the reliability of the scoring and the validity of the interpretations. But even with those caveats, clinical practitioners continue to find these techniques incredibly useful in their everyday practice. So as we wrap up this explainer on the unconscious mind, I want to leave you with a final thought. Think about how much of your own personality exists way below the surface of your conscious awareness. If an expert handed you a blank piece of paper, a pencil, or maybe a strange ink blot right now, what hidden desires, conflicts, or truths would your own projections reveal about you? It's definitely a mystery worth pondering. Thanks for joining me on this one, and I'll see you next time.